happy 2021 to everybody. Hopefully, we're all kind of, a little less numb, hoping to get these vaccines out there. And, they're saying by summer, Tim, right? Summer, we should all be kind of out of this thing. It should be an increasingly better spring.
We should all have a shot at something, particularly if they, in fact, go through with this suggested new dynamic of just pushing it all out. And then second shot comes when second shot comes. One of my little brothers, ironically, my brother Charles, who doesn't actually, for years and years and years, worked in patient care and social services and was actually engaged with patients. Doesn't do that anymore. But nevertheless, he got his first dose of the Pfizer. I guess it's Pfizer. Is that
right? Right. That's the I get would be.
And nothing, no pain or anything like that, and good. And so he's taken care of. This is a big deal in my family because Charles is one of my brothers and sisters and I who constantly goes to see my mother.
Yeah.
My mother retired from work, but she's at home, and Charles is he and my niece are the ones that are in and out of my mother's apartment. And now that he's got one and we'll get the other, it really cuts down significantly on the possibility of my other brother quit going to my mom's because he actually works in patient care. And so
Charles, I mean, and I've I know Charles too, and Charles, when I spoke to him, he was telling me about he's out there bringing people their meds, and he's in the world, he's out there moving around, and that's that's front line.
Anyway, it's a thing. So us, we film critics here in Los Angeles. It's funny, my actor friends. And look, I love my actor friends, but I'm not sure that the cast of The Young and the Restless are really going to be high up on that list. I love you guys. I love you. But I'm thinking maybe we ought to knock out, I don't know, Cops or something first with the vaccine. So actors in Hollywood, all very complicated to figure out right now, man. Very complicated.
Well, we're going to get out of it. One person who did not get out of it, but did not die of COVID, just passed naturally, unfortunately, recently was Michael Apted. Oh. We lost the great Michael Apted just about a month and 3 days shy of his 80th birthday. One of just the classiest generation of filmmakers ever. Tim and I, before the show, were talking about stuff. Yeah, there's some stuff in there that we could pick on, but if you look at the stuff that we don't want to pick on, I mean, there's everything from Coal Miner's Daughter to Gorillas in the Mist. I mean, a lot of Oscar-nominated stuff. The Bond film, The World Is Not Enough, and of course, most famously, the Up series.
The Up series, to which I think we calculated he had made his way up to 56 or so up. Yeah, I see it there, 56 up. The Up series, of course, 63 up. Actually, is where it got to. Wade. 2019 was 63 up.
Wow.
Started when these children from different classes and backgrounds and ethnic groups in the UK and England were 7 years old. Most of them, not all of them, but most of them have stayed with the series over these many years. And it has been fascinating. The series has took some criticism regarding some things. And I loved that what Michael Apted did is he took the criticisms that the series was receiving and he put it in the series.
I love it.
That's wonderful. That's a true filmmaker or a true documentarian. And hey, he knocked out everything from Ray Donovan's. It's not like he ever went away. Michael Apted, and a real old school literally from the old school of British filmmaking, BBC and all that. It's where his roots are from. And Michael Apted.
He even did a Chronicles of Narnia movie.
Yeah,
he did
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I mean it's amazing. I mean you look at this, and I'm just looking at the years. He's working pretty much every other year or every year. 72, 74, 75, 77, 79, 80, 81, 83, 84, 85, 87, 88, 91. He took off 3 years there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then 92 movies in 92, including Incident at Lola and Thunderheart.
Mm-hmm.
30 in 93, 2 movies in 94. 96. Then he took off 3 years and did 2 movies in 99. I mean, these aren't even the documentaries. This is just, he never ever stopped working. And I never met Michael Apted. I never interviewed him, but I sat next to him once on a curb on the 4th of July, preparing for the for a 4th of July 10K race. And I was sitting on a curb right in front of the porta potties, lacing up my shoes. And I looked next to me, and there's Michael Apted lacing up his shoes. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. Like, I don't know what this means. I don't know if this even means anything, but it's really, really cool. I'm right next to Michael Apted, and I'm probably never going to see him again. But I hope he has a good race. And that was it. That was it. It was a funny, one of those funny, surreal moments in life.
Well, the jogging probably is what kept him going to damn near 80.
Yeah.
You look at Michael Apted, that range. It's that range of stuff. Enough. I forgot he did that. It's just that you don't see that one anymore. You don't see that kind of stuff anymore. You can poke at some of them. We poked at Nell. We poked at its extreme measures. But you know what? He made Nell, and he made extreme measures.
I know.
And you
know what? Firstborn from 1984, a movie which has gotten a lot of flack, but I really like Firstborn with Peter Weller as that psychotic, stepdad character. I mean, it's pulpy, and frankly, I don't think if Peter Weller, I don't think he would have been RoboCop if he hadn't been in Firstborn.
Yeah.
So well, one of those movies we're poking at a little bit. It just also happens to be recently on Blu-ray, and it's been on our list to cover for a few weeks. So we're going to cover it right now, and that is the Lawrence Kasdan scripted Continental Divide, starring John Belushi and Blair Brown from 1981. This was the movie that he made the year after Coal Miner's Daughter.
Yeah,
and I can understand.
So bizarre.
you just directed Sissy Spacek to an Oscar. Michael Apted, what are you going to do next? Well, I'm going to try to make John Belushi into a matinee idol. I don't know, Tim.
I don't know. Yeah, and it's not like like you said, Lawrence Kasdan wrote that movie. And and oddly, this is the thing about Continental Divide. This is not in any way, shape, or form a good movie. It failed at the box office at the time. But you watch this movie, and there are moments in this movie. Alan Garfield's in this movie. Blair Brown's in the movie, where I remember those moments from this movie. I suppose that says something about it, that almost 40 years after its failure, it still carved itself into my psyche in certain sort of ways.
It is a strange kind of romantic comedy from a period that had a lot of strange romantic comedies, but this is definitely one of the more peculiar ones. And part of it is that Belushi and Blair Brown are just terribly mismatched in this movie.
So wrong, yeah.
They're both kind of wrong, but they're both of the moment, right? I mean, he had made Animal House, and she was kind of just on the verge of whatever that TV show she was, and she'd been in
Days and Nights of Molly Dodd.
There it is, Molly Dodd. I knew you'd remember, and I didn't. And she had done Altered States and got some heat out of that. So I mean, we forget John Bailey, recently president of the Academy, was the DP on this. Steven Spielberg and super agent Bernie Brillstein were executive producers. I mean, this is very much a moment movie, right? Like, why would Michael Apted say, nah, I'm going to turn down Lawrence Kasdan and Steven Spielberg? Why would you do that?
Yeah.
But it is a strange movie, but nonetheless, the pre-Michael Apted passing audio commentary by Daniel Creamer and film historian Nat Segaloff is very interesting. It's got a lot of little weird anecdotes that kind of explain why the film and what went wrong and whatnot. And it is on Blu-ray from Kino Lorber. So with that little tribute, Tim, let's let me make mention real quickly of a couple of 4K UHD Blu-rays that are out now. One of which I can recommend. The other of which, I don't know, Tim, maybe you have a preference on this. Then I'll have a couple of giveaways too. Love and Monsters with Dylan O'Brien. Did you see this?
I don't think that one made my film week list.
It is awfully peculiar as to why this is even on 4K. It's from Paramount, who's being very aggressive in putting stuff on 4K. But I just don't know what they thought they would get out of this. I'm not sure really what the point of the movie was. Anyway, it's basically it basically goes into that Zombieland category, I guess. I'm not overly familiar with Dylan O'Brien. I guess he's some kind of something that I should care about. He was in the Maze Runner
Oh
and
yeah, I remember
whatever.
that kid.
Yeah, like monster. I mean, it's not a zombie film per se; it's a monster film. But monsters have taken over the world much as zombies would, and so everybody's got to live underground. And he's then he finds the girl from high school, and they've got to fight and Michael Rooker shows up, and it's like, okay, I mean, it feels like Zombieland as a vehicle for a kid they're trying to turn into a star. I just don't get why they went full 4K on it. Anyway, it's perfectly fine. It's got a bunch of extras, deleted scenes, and featurette stuff on the second disc. But for 4K aficionados, right now, I'm going to say the movie you really, really want to check out is Blade. Wesley Snipes. Wesley Snipes is probably the first legit Marvel hero that worked in this modern era, pre-Marvel Cinematic Universe, pre-MCU. But I think this was when they realized this was a New Line thing. I think this is when they realized things were really, really they were really gonna happen. But at least they could make them happen if they got the right star and if they got all the right people involved and all that stuff. So I think Blade looks just kick-ass on 4K. The colors and the shading and the darks, it all just really comes together in this amazing vampire saga. I am still a huge fan of this series. I think Stephen Dorff is a great heavy in this movie. Wesley Snipes has never been better. He's got the physicality, the martial arts skills, and he looks the part. It's a great film.
Yeah. They well done. This David S. Goyer, I think, who I guess he penned some Batman films, some of those earlier Batman films, anyway. So it's sort of like working in that genre there, pretty good. How do this particular Blade, at the end of it, it had all those big sort of special effects that came in. Stephen Dorff sort of morphs into this. How does that stuff hold up?
It doesn't quite, but I'll tell you, it holds up better than all the stuff that Del Toro did in Blade 2. Blade 2, and that's the thing. Like, Blade 1, I think, is a great movie. Blade 2 is a Del Toro movie with Blade awkwardly shoved into it.
Yeah.
Like, there are monsters and CG effects, and you're like, this isn't a Blade movie anymore. Like that's not a vampire. That looks like the Predator crossed with the Alien, crossed with something else. Like, you're really stretching vampires here.
It's supposed to be vampires, man.
It's like, mouths and teeth, and it got a little out of control. But Blade Trinity, I love. I thought Blade Trinity was right back on track, and I know everybody else hates that movie, so what do I know? But no, Chris Christopherson is great in this thing. I mean, I really love it. Now, here's the question: we're gonna get an MCU reboot of Blade, with Mahershala Ali. Mahershala, great actor, also looks the part. It didn't even dawn on me until he was announced, and I thought, he kind of looks a little like Wesley Snipes.
Yeah.
So it's good casting. Snipes looks exactly like the comic character, and I'm like, okay, I see how you kind of triangulated that, but he's not a martial artist.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do there?
And you know what the other problem is? Wesley Snipes looks exactly the same now as he did in 1998. Literally, he has the physicality now. He actually still makes those sort of chop socky movies all the time. He's running around some movie kicking somebody in the head. And given that he is I'm not saying he looks exactly the same. He has a couple of miles on him in terms of just that he's an older guy. But what the hell is wrong with that for the storyline? Yeah. Why not pick it up? Because Blade did age. Blade was only half vampire or part vampire.
That's right.
Whatever.
Correct. Yeah.
So if you want to redo Blade, particularly if it's going to be a contemporarily set Blade, a Blade set present day, I guess. I'm sorry, you just got to. Wesley Snipes is still a movie star. He can do anything you can write. And I love Mahershala, but there's actually just no point to that. If we're gonna do it, your Blade is standing right over there. His name is Wesley Snipes.
Well, there it is. It's got an audio commentary on it. It's got a few other things. The commentary is a cast and crew thing, kind of all cut together. Some featurettes, nothing overly amazing, but you're getting it because you want to get the Movies Anywhere code. and pop that into your library, and you just want to watch Blade. And I hope they bring the rest of the trilogy out soon. We got a quick giveaway. Paramount's being very, very nice to our listeners. We're going to give away 2 4Ks of Tom Cruise in Collateral, 2 4Ks of Tom Cruise in Collateral, and 2 Blu-rays of The Godfather Coda, the recut Godfather 3. Go ahead and send us emails to gods@digigods.com or gods@cinegods.com. Make sure that you put Cruise in the subject line if you want Collateral, and put Godfather in the subject line if you want Godfather Coda. Cruise and Godfather, those are the 2. And put your name and address in the body of the email. Make sure it gets to us by the 14th. I'm sorry, not the 14th, the 24th. January 24th. And we will pick some winners on January 24th, and then make sure that Paramount sends you some happy stuff. So, and we'll let you know. We'll let you know on the 24th. So there is that. Real quickly, got a few little off titles here to make mention of. Some late coming Christmas stuff. It's after Christmas, but it's worth making a mention of too. BBC has Charlie and Lola animated, that cool little animated show they do. How many more minutes until Christmas? And this is that's just one of 7 different little episodes on here, but it's really, really fun. And Charlie is broken. I completely know about guinea pigs, and I Am Extremely Magic, or some of the others on here. But anyway, it's a fun show. Charlie and Lola is a good little show. And then also want to put a special plug in for a good friend of mine, who songwriter Michael McLean, who has performed a musical show that he has done for many, many years, The Forgotten Carols. It kind of roams around the western states. And Michael performed at played a beautiful, beautiful song at my mother's funeral. And during the pandemic, he obviously couldn't take The Forgotten Carols on tour. So he put it onto, they basically did a performance and shot it and put it out on DVD. And I do recommend that you go and check this out. I don't know that it is necessarily. It was in theaters in November in certain places where theaters were open, but otherwise, The Forgotten Carols is on DVD, and there will be a link on the DigiGods.com site that will take you to where you can purchase it. I'm not sure that it's necessarily on Amazon, but where you can purchase it, I'll put a link there. But it is absolutely wonderful. It's an alternate way of looking at the Christmas story through the eyes and ears of all the other figures that were sort of peripheral to it. It's really, really a beautiful, beautiful thing. The Forgotten Carols. Also, Michael Smirkonish, Things I Wish I Knew Before I Started Talking. He, if those who don't know, Michael Smirkonish is a talk show host and
kind of a political prognosticator guy.
Kind of, yeah. He's sort of like he's not, it's not like he's Jimmy Fallon or anything. But he's been doing this for 30 years, and he kind of celebrated his 30th anniversary with a pandemic one-man performance, and it's a pretty interesting kind of time capsule worth checking out. He addresses our partisan divide and everything that's sort of now. It really gets into it. So it's very much a movie of the moment. It's sort of a documentary performance piece, but it's really worth checking out. Smirkonish is a very interesting guy, has a lot of interesting observations, and I would say if you want to kind of contextualize what's happening right now, it's a good way to start. And then quick little music note on the B-52s live at the US Festival from September 3rd, 1982. Ooh. I remember this.
Oh, yeah.
I chose not to go to the US Festival, even though all my friends were. What an idiot I was, because what a memory that would have been. This is terrific. And I remember I was in high school at the time. And look, I love me the B-52s. They still perform. They have aged well. The music rocks. I love the whole retro vibe that they do. I still listen to Rock Lobster when I run. It just juices me up for that last mile. So what can you say? B-52s live at the US Festival. Tim, big B-52 fan?
I love the B-52s. The US Festival. I was too young for Woodstock.
Yeah.
I think I was 69. I've been like 8 or something like that. US Festival, 82. Let's see. I was stationed in. I think I was stationed in Germany in 82. So no US Festival for me. I just, over the course of the history of time, I just missed all the good crap I just missed all the really good shit. I was either too young or too old or too. Yeah, what are you gonna do? Sometimes you live your life right between the. Well.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So we got LGBT stuff, which I think you got some things to talk about. We also have exploitation. You tell me, should I hit the exploitation first, or do you want to knock out the?
You go ahead and get started and then I'll.
All right. First up is Panic, which is an exploitation movie from the 80s that they did an HD restoration on just a few years ago. Basically, a bacterial experiment goes wrong in an English village, and you got monsters and gore, and everything goes to hell. There's really no, there's nothing surprising in it. It's just a good, solid exploitation gore film with all that 80s style, and the remaster for HD gives it an extra pop to all the crimson red blood. Henry Silva and Barbara Boucher. Gosh, Henry Silva. There's a guy,
wow.
right?
Yeah.
What a face.
That face.
That chiseled face. Henry Silva and Barbara Boucher in the very, very cool and exploitation-y, sleazy Cry of a Prostitute. This also is a nice little vintage thing that they did a restoration of just a few years ago. And it's, Henry Silva is the reason to watch this. It's really schlocky. And Henry Silva's working his butt off to overcome the fact that it's not terribly well made, but it's fun it wouldn't have been fun 30 years ago, but it's kind of fun to watch now. Just Before Dawn with George Kennedy and Chris Lemmon, of all people.
And Jack Lemmon's son.
Yes, Jack Lemmon's son, who was briefly I think didn't he play Jack Lemmon in something at some point? I thought he played his dad. Anyway,
interesting career, Chris Lemmon there. Wonderful piano player, him, but anyway.
Well, this is a slasher film. Five people go out for weekend camping, and of course, they obviously have not seen Friday the 13th or Halloween or any other movie where people go camping. Stop it! Stop going camping. It's a bad scene. And George Kennedy plays the forest ranger. Doesn't he always play something like that? Of course, everything goes south. It's Just Before Dawn. Again, schlocky, fun to watch. Savage Streets is really, really only worth watching because it happens to have Linda Blair. Linda Blair went from making The Exorcist to doing a whole lot of exploitation garbage. And the only reason to watch any of it is Linda Blair, because she's Linda Blair. I mean, this has a lot of fun special features on it. The movie is Savage Streets. It's basically a revenge thriller. It's Death Wish with Linda Blair wearing a tight outfit and killing bad guys. But it's got some cool moments in it. It's got some interviews and 3 audio commentaries, which is 3 more than it really needs. But hey, why not? Second to last one here is The Devil's Wedding Night, starring Mark Damon, who of course would go on to be a rather big kind of B movie producer and distributor. This is like a basically a medieval vampire thing done in kind of a Hammer style, but it's culty and it's weird and it's got some fun stuff in it. It was made in Italy. It was made by shot by Joe D'Amato and directed by Luigi Bazzella. So it's got all that. It's got that whole giallo vibe to it as well, but with a little bit of American exploitation. And then here's the one, Tim, I wanted to bring up. I want to know if you have ever seen this. I have never heard of this movie. Never heard of this movie. You and I, honestly, you and I would cover the whole gamut of blaxploitation film. I have never heard of this one. Have you ever heard of or seen The Black Gestapo?
The Black Gestapo, dude. I have The Black Gestapo.
Oh my gosh! See, I knew.
In a terrible. I suppose a public domain.
I'm going to give you the Blu-ray. I'm hanging on the Blu-ray for you. I'm going to give you this Blu-ray so you can get rid of that public domain thing. This is on Blu-ray.
About 1975 or something like that. 76, 74, 75.
Oh my gosh!
Like that.
This is a stone cold riot. I could not believe that this movie got made. This is like 3 the Hard Way on steroids.
It's like, dude, these sort of wild sort of references. You got to know to like Marcus Garvey and all this kind of. This guy that raises up this army in the hood, the army, the People's Army, the Inner City Army, and stuff. I don't know what the hell they call it, and he sort of like models it on this whole sort of thing. And it's all sorts of crazy. It all happens in Watts.
No, I mean it is fantastically fun to watch. It's fantastically fun to watch. Directed by Lee Frost, who was a big exploitation guy. Directed a lot of stuff in the '60s, and we talked a little bit about Lee Frost in the Ray's Schlock documentary. And Lee Frost wrote this with Wes Bishop. But Charles Robinson, Rod Perry, the People's Army, and I guess in some places where the title was sensitive, they released this as Ghetto Warriors.
That would happen a lot.
I'm not sure how Ghetto Warriors is much better than Black Gestapo.
It's so not.
But
it might be worse. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
man.
Well, let me tell you something.
That one.
Let me tell you, this is what's funny about you mentioning that you've got that public domain thing, because here's what it even has on the back of the Blu-ray. It sums up the movie, and then it says, "Throw away all those PD bootlegs and watch this classic in HD from the original camera negative." There you go.
It literally got me.
It got you. They figured you out.
Yeah, we know you're watching it, bro. We know you are.
I'm telling you, the Black Gestapo is just a whole lot of fun. I mean, it really is, and there is this whole class of films, blaxploitation and many of them exploitation as well, that all kind of traffic in the Black liberation moment about 5 or 6 years after it kind of peaked. And Three the Hard Way, I always thought was the best of them, and I think it still is. I think there's a lot of good stuff in that.
Yeah.
But this is fun, and it's worth adding to the compendium. All right. So with that, let's want to seg to the LGBT stuff.
Yeah, I got some LBGT stuff here that might be kind of interesting, including The Goddess of Fortune, which is a perfectly lovely little movie, actually, that I in fact did see. It's about this couple, and they're kind of tinkering along, doing okay, and then they run into this other couple that has these kids, and the kids come to live with them. They're kind of left in their custody for a while, and it's about how the presence of those children changes everything about the dynamic of their relationship in some ways that they don't expect. The husbands, that the LGBT for not LGBT for nothing, the husbands are the ones who sort of develop an interesting relationship there, and I thought that was sort of an interesting sort of hook on that. There's one called No Hard Feelings. This is a fairly recent film too. That's again, it's just sort of like a lovely film set in this sort of Iranian German family at a refugee shelter. And they just sort of like these people start to develop these relationships. It's more about the refugee shelter and being sort of German Iranians in refugees at this particular time than it is about anything else in particular. But these sort of beautiful, lovely relationships do sort of develop in these situations when people don't know, where they're going to be from one day to the next, who'll be allowed to stay and who's going to get shipped back. So that's kind of a moving kind of thing. What is this one, Wade? Aviva? Is that the
Aviva.
Is that the 1920 the 2020 film?
Yeah, the Boaz Yakin film.
Oh, that's a Boaz film. I don't know that
Boaz film. Yeah. It's Boaz is such an interesting filmmaker. He's been all over the map. He's made, I mean, he sort of had, Boaz kind of comes out of the Tarantino group a little bit. Lawrence Bender was very much a factor in getting Boaz his career, and he wrote the Rookie for Clint Eastwood, Charlie Sheen, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of his big breakthrough, and then he what was the it was at Cannes, the film he wrote about the young black kid. What was that he wrote and directed?
I know that movie.
Yeah, he did that one, which is really quite powerful and didn't get enough traction. And so yeah, he's now come to this very unusual film called Aviva, which is kind of it's very explicit. It's got some rather interesting musical sequences in it, some dance sequences, and it centers all around an online romance between a Parisian and an American in New York, who kind of then consummate the relationship in person, and it goes into some really unexpected directions. I don't want to kind of give anything away. But what's interesting about this is what it's kind of anticipates about gender and gender relationships and the role of gender in relationships. And it was reviewed on Film Week. I was not on that week. Claudia was. Claudia's quoted on the box, which I really think is really kind of cool. Sexy and often daring. So I would refer you to that Film Week to hear what Claudia has to say about it. She had some really, really great comments. But Aviva by Boaz Yakin, kind of an interesting addition to the whole genre, and that's why I set it aside for that. But yeah.
I see we have what they call El Principal, the Prince, a 2019 Chilean film.
Yeah.
That's really a very powerful movie. It's set in 1970 in this prison in Chile, and in some ways it reminded me of what was that wonderful Raul Julia film, Kiss of the Spider
Woman. Yeah.
Very reminiscent of Kiss of the Spider Woman. This film, beautifully acted. Sebastian Muñoz, production designer turned director. This is his directorial debut, and it's quite impressive. I don't know if it was the Chilean nomination for the Academy Award in 2019, but I do remember it. I remember it was a very, very good movie.
And then lastly here we've got Equation to an Unknown, which is some would possibly call this pornography. It splits the difference. Made in 1980. It is French. So some people would say, well, if it's French, it's automatically pornographic to begin with.
Well, if it's French in 1980,
yeah,
you know.
But it is an erotic film, and this is from the original Cameron negative. This is from Altered Innocence, who's at alteredinnocence.net. Altered Innocence is a legit foreign language and kind of art film distributor. So don't dismiss the film based on some of the more lurid descriptions of it that you find online. It is I think it gets, if this were a straight film, it probably wouldn't catch as much flack, but in 1980 it definitely was pushing buttons because it's gay erotica trying to kind of moving into the mainstream. But Equation to an Unknown is the only film that was directed by the guy who directed it, whose name is what is his name? I can't find his name here. But anyway, and that's it. He shot it under a pseudonym. That's the thing. So I don't know what his actual name was, but anyway. So this is from the original negative. It's got some interesting extras on it, including a short film called Diary of a Fight, which it relates to this. It relates to the name of the film, and it's narrated by Alain Delon. And it's a really interesting time capsule if this is your thing. So, Equation to an Unknown.
I was trying to look up. It's Francis Saval, Saval. You're better with all these names. As Dietrich Don Velasa.
There it is. Yes, Dietrich de Velsa. Dietrich de Velsa is right. But that's the pseudonym.
His name is Francis. Is it Saval? Savel.
Yeah, Savel. Yeah, that would be it. That's it. Yeah. So anyway, totally kind of obscure filmmaker. It's the only film he ever made, so it's worth giving a look at. So what do we move to today? We got TV. We've got some foreign stuff.
I was looking at the new movies. I saw Misbehavior there, which is a Keira Knightley film in Guga and Beth Raw, who are these two actresses who I just love, and Jessie Buckley. All sort of actresses, sort of on the scene and doing things and being very, very interesting. This was an interesting film about an actual event that had to do with women who intended to disrupt the 1970 Miss World beauty pageant in London. And these, I remember back in the 70s, this would be a thing. They made a bunch of these movies about, it's during that period, Helen Reddy, I think we lost, I Am Woman and all that kind of stuff. And there was a whole bunch of these movies about television shows about women who were going to go into these beauty pageants, the Miss America pageant, the Miss USA pageant, and disrupt them and the sort of things that happened at that time. And this, I thought, was a sort of interesting story. But for whatever reason, even in 2020, and I don't know whether it had anything to do with, because you would have thought it would have helped the sort of Me Too movement. This movie just sort of tittered away and it just didn't hook the imagination. And I just thought it was a sweet, funny little movie about that burgeoning period of women's liberation. But I don't know, didn't catch on. I liked it anyway. Did they do anything with it?
It's a hell of a cast. I mean, Keira Knightley and Gugu Mbatha-Raw, Jesse Buckley, Rhys Ifans, Keely Hawes, Leslie Manville, Greg Kinnear. That's quite a great cast. And Philippa Lowthorpe, I'm not familiar with as a director, but she got the call and she got to handle a pretty great cast.
Yeah.
Not much here. Cast interviews, some featurettes, and a trailer, but otherwise a very nice Blu-ray. Also here, Honest Thief. I don't know if you saw Honest Thief with Liam Neeson. But it's basically him in Taken mode, doing this same shtick all over again. He's a guy who was a big time bank robber, and now he's falling in love, and he's falling in love with Kate Walsh, who runs who he meets because he's using her little local business, and of course then they're coming for him. So there's an FBI corruption thing that gets involved here, where he wants to turn himself in, but the corrupt FBI agents want the money, and it all goes south. And of course, then he's got to do his Taken thing, which is, I'm on the run so that I can do the honorable thing and save her life and all this stuff. So it's basically another version of Taken. But Liam Neeson, he's in his 60s, dude, and he's playing action heroes.
And you still buy it. You buy it. I can buy Liam Neeson knocking out just about anybody.
Totally buy
it. New Mutants. 20. This is pretty neat. Maisie Williams. Maisie, of course, we know from Game of Thrones recently, and a whole bunch of other things, and Charlie Heaton and others. Anyway, a neat little sort of mutant movie, superhero kids with superpowers movie. These young kids, they have these abilities that they discover, and they're being held in this secret facility, and they got to fight their way out.
Technically, the last of the X-Men movies made under the 20th Century Fox deal before Disney acquired them, but it otherwise has no relationship whatsoever to the other X-Men films.
To the other X-Men things, and not related to Gifted either, which was another series that I'm not mistaken. Anyway, but so far as those sort of films go in that genre, not terrible, not bad at all. Anything decent on that one in terms of a?
No, not particularly. Deleted scenes and featurettes, the usual thing. There is a thing here called Origins and Influences with legendary Marvel illustrator Bill Sienkiewicz, which is fine. I mean, Sienkiewicz is the guy that they really emphasize. He shows up in another featurette as well, but otherwise nothing overly amazing. Cagefighter. I want to make a quick mention of. Look, it's a movie about cage fighting. Forget about that. Seriously, forget about it. There's no other reason to watch this other than the fact that it's got some great like cage fighting figures in it. Like Chuck Liddell is in the movie. Okay, he's too old now, but you know what? He's good enough for a movie. If you like kickboxer movies, if you like those old Van Damme movies and whatnot, you're going to want to check this out. It's a lot of fun. It's basically a bunch of just muscular guys beating the crap out of each other, and Gina Gershon gets thrown in there for good measure. And damn it, I love Gina Gershon. So go check out Cage.
The War with Grandpa, De Niro. De Niro has leaned into his elderliness in a certain sort of way that I deeply, deeply appreciate. He's not trying to, hang on to the taxi driver guy, but in a certain way, he brings that taxi driver guy with him, no matter what the hell he's doing. So this one's about this kid who has this room at his house, and he loves his room, and his grandfather has to move in and moves into his room with him, and he just can't stand the notion. And I don't blame him, frankly. And he, declares war on his grandfather to try to get him out. And of course, it's really all about how they're built, how they build their relationship, and it kind of comes to love. You Cheech Marion walking around the film, and and a few other interesting folks. So this one was fun for me. Robert De Niro in that mode, I kind of did.
And
Uma
Thurman
and James
Christopher Walken.
And Christopher Walken,
Walken.
Yeah. You can't go wrong. Anything? Did they stick anything on there?
Absolutely nothing. Only a Movies Anywhere code to add it to your library. But there he is, De Niro doing. He is leaning into his age in a really interesting way, isn't he?
Yeah, he's just good. Go ahead and do that. I reviewed Jungleland on Film Week when it was out, and I gave it a pretty good review. It's Max Winkler, so Henry Winkler's son.
That's who that is. Okay.
Yeah. Charlie Hunnam, Jack O'Connell, these brothers, and again, it's about fighting again. It's all a street brawl fighting. You got these brothers; they've been left on their own since they were children, when their parents would sort of abandon them. And Jack's the older one, and he's the schemer and the one who's always calculating stuff. I'm sorry, Charlie's the older one, and Jack is the young one who can fight. That's what he can do, and they're going to go on this road trip. Now, there's this B storyline in this movie that has to do with this young woman that some gangster tells them that he's going to need him to get this young woman and take this young woman with them on this road trip. They're going to go out to California so that Jack can be in this big fight. But they got to take this young woman. Now, what the hell is going on with this young woman and who she is and where they're taking her to and all of that kind of stuff is, it's interesting, but it always felt like it belonged in a completely different movie. So this felt like the sort of melding of two movies into one. When in fact it was just two movies, and they should have made that movie, and they should have made this movie, and they should have let them live as separate sort of movies. Nevertheless, fairly decent filmmaking and fairly decent directing from Max Winkler.
So we talk a lot about Grindstone, who pumps out stuff for Lionsgate, and we make fun of the fact that Grindstone basically has two modes, which is they take old action stars and put them into low-budget new action films like, Antonio Banderas or Mel Gibson or even Robert De Niro on occasion. And then they also make movies about talking animals. Well, Tim, they're branching out. They made a movie called Iron Mask. I'm not going to tell you whether this is good or bad. I'm just going to tell you the cast, and I'm going to read you the plot, and I'm going to let you make up your own mind. This stars Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jason Fleming, and Jackie Chan.
Oh boy!
It is called Iron Mask.
Look, it sounds like the medical insurance is going to be
this
movie.
Here is the description. Here's the actual description that they use. For the first time ever, screen legends Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jackie Chan face off against each other in this epic fantasy adventure. In order to save his homeland from certain doom, a kung fu master, Chan, must escape from the maniacal James Hook, Schwarzenegger, in order to send his daughter a secret talisman that will allow her to control a massive and mythical dragon. This larger-than-life globe-trotting tale, ranging from the impenetrable Tower of London to the fabled Silk Road and China's Great Wall, also stars Rutger Hauer in one of the screen icon's final performances.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to say anything else with that plot description. Because I can't. I can't. I just can't. I don't know.
I'm looking at Arnold here, dressed up like Captain Hook, and I mean, like he's dressed. He's got the hat and everything.
I gotta tell you, I don't know. I don't know how this script got written. I don't know how it got into the hands of these stars. I don't know how it got funded. All I can say is weird things happen in the world.
Yeah, they had to come up with a lot of money to pay Arnold and Jackie. Those guys. I mean, they're not demanding $20 million or anything anymore. But I bet they're a couple of $1 million a pop to get those two guys out to do this thing.
What a movie!
What can I say? Arnold used to be the governor of California. People, that's the governor on this poster right here. But then again, Jesse Ventura was the governor of what was it? Where something?
In the Midwest, of Minnesota.
Minnesota. What the hell?
Oh my. Also another one here, Smiley Face Killers from Bret Easton Ellis,
I remember that one.
inspired by true events, right? Smiley Face Killers. Bret Easton Ellis is. Do you ever listen to his podcast?
No, never have.
I haven't either, and a lot of people say it's quite a thing, so I might try that at some point. Anyway,
He
this
was
is
always
also
a little wacky to me.
well, he definitely is. This is interesting to be sure. It's more in the American Psycho vein than anything. This is also from Grindstone, but more straightforward. Anyway, it's basically a serial killer movie. It's based on actual drownings that took place in California, kind of mid California. I never heard of the actual drownings. I don't know the actual story, but it's pretty freaky, and the fact that they went and said, you know what, we've got a really scary, freaky person to put in some kind of a serial killer outfit. Why don't we hire Crispin Glover? Well, that's a stretch. But there you go with Crispin Glover. Let's see, anything else here that we should make mention of? Yeah, let me make two more real quick ones here on the new film front. Nelson Algren Live is basically kind of a staged performance and a documentary all in one. Nelson Algren, very famous novelist, not known, to a lot of people, but really, really popular with a lot of others. Kind of wrote, really gritty stories about, the underbelly of America and the downtrodden and whatnot. A little bit of a Steinbeckian vibe to him, except more kind of modern, not so much about the rural poor or whatnot, but about the marginalized in the cities, drug addicts and gigolos and pimps and things like that. So he all very much centered in Chicago, which is where he's from anyway. So he would have turned 100, and a bunch of people gathered together at the Steppenwolf Theater to perform a reading, kind of a performance piece, a reading of his life and his work in his own words. And it includes Willem Dafoe. And if you like the writing, if you're familiar with Algren, it'll be very, very moving to you. If you're not really into Algren or you don't know much about him, it'll probably not be your cup of tea. But Nelson Algren Live is really worth checking out. And then there's also Lupin Third, the first. I meant to check in with Charles to get more of a background on this Lupin stuff. This is from G Kids through Shout Factory, because Lupin is it's a thing. It's a franchise. I'm not familiar with the other films. Tim, have you seen any of the other Lupin films?
No, I haven't. Is this a French series of films?
No, it's
Are they?
Japanese.
They're Japanese.
It's like, yeah, it's kind of anime, sort of. I mean, it's CG animation, it's 3D animation. It's not really anime, cell animation anime, but the animators are Japanese, and the it's I don't really understand it. I kind of feel like it has a whole, the plot line here is not typical anime stuff. It's about trying to resurrect the Third Reich, and it gets a little Indiana Jones-ish, and there's this thing called the Bresson Diary, which is kind of like the MacGuffin, the Indiana Jones MacGuffin. It's very impressively done, but I feel like not knowing the character and not knowing the previous films in the series, I was a little bit at a disadvantage. Nonetheless, it's really nice animation, and I assume if you've seen the other two films, or whatever else there is, that you'll probably thoroughly enjoy it. But it's not something to jump into sight unseen.
I wanted to mention a couple of the films in the doc categories, including one that's under the Criterion, that Minding the Gap film. Which was a really fascinating 2018 documentary that followed these young skateboarder kids in their sort of rundown Rust Belt community over the course of several years. And it is just a deeply revealing sort of film as we see these boys, they're all young men, boys who become young men, sort of engaging with each other over the course of the several years, that it's Bing Liu. If I'm not mistaken,
Bing Liu. Bing Liu is the director.
The director of the film, and the sort of sometimes toxic masculinity, and we can see sort of the way it develops and where it comes from, and how what it metamorphs into as we watch again these boys sort of become young men, and the things that we find out is a really, really good sort of
And it's worth noting too that we started to give our editing award with the LA Film Critics not long ago. Like for the LA Film Critics only started giving out an award for editing maybe 5 years ago or something like that. But what's interesting is that 2 of the films that have won that editing award since we initiated it have been documentaries. At least 2.
Wow.
The OJ miniseries for HBO got the, which is like 6 hours long or 7 hours or whatever it is. It's long. Got a very deserved editing award, and this did as well. Minding the Gap is an incredibly well edited film, and documentaries don't often get enough credit for that.
Yeah. Another doc that I just want to mention. This one's not from Criterion. It's one of the other docs with the Donut King from Alice Gu.
Yeah.
It's another just fascinating, which is about this guy. Ted Nioy, I think is the way you pronounce his name, and his wife, and they have this donut shop, and they develop. If you've ever seen a sort of pink bakery box, people get cakes and donuts and all that kind of stuff, and they sort of developed the concept of that. Those sort of pink bakery boxes, him and his wife. But what this movie is really about is the immigration story, a particular sort of Asian immigration story to America, as well as it is about this business and in the economy and the economy for of immigrating families. Because very often you'll notice that families that immigrate to America, what they do is start businesses.
Yeah.
For all kinds of reasons, and this has a lot to do with that. So it's just really, really a fascinating documentary from that standpoint. The Donut King, and
It's
the other one.
in some
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Wade.
I was gonna say really, really quickly. It reminds me in some respects of the Nathan's famous Nathan documentary about Nathan's famous hot dogs. It's which is also an immigrant story. This illiterate Eastern European Jew who comes here and gets a job working for on Coney Island selling hot dogs, and then thinks I could do the same thing for less and make a much better profit, and goes into business and becomes one of the biggest self-made multimillionaires ever, and then his kids screw it all up. which is also part of the story too often. But anyway, it's a good doc. Sorry, go on. Next one.
The hip hop. I just thought this one was interesting too. Hip hop, the songs that shook America, which was a really sort of interesting historical look back at hip hop in America. Hip hop is really more than 40 years old now.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. I mean, it's just absolutely fascinating to think about this music coming out of mostly New York in the mid 70s and how it traversed America, the East Coast to West Coast thing, the way it changed American culture in many ways. I can remember when the first when I first started hearing hip hop as the music that would appear in commercials selling things. Cars, or washing machines, or whatever it is, and this historical look at the culture of hip hop and what it's meant to America and how it sort of insinuated itself into all kinds of fascinating. Questlove, I think, is one of the producers, but we talked to all kinds of fascinating people, and and they really sort of examine the entire thing very deeply, and they look at some very specific songs that had a particular sort of impact in the culture over the course of that more than 40 years.
And what and again, this is very specific to America, but what I hope someone does, which this doesn't do because it can't, it's too broad of a scope, you only have so much time, but what I hope someone does is take a look at international hip hop at some point. Because when hip hop exploded, today, literally right now, there is hip hop in France, in England, in Russia, in Japan, in Korea, in the Middle East. There is Egyptian hip hop. There is Indian hip hop. It's extraordinary how in just a matter of a few decades, that particular movement that comes out of New York in the 1970s becomes a vehicle for a particular demographic in almost every different culture all around the world. I mean, it is spread like wildfire because it had something visceral, something raw. It's really an amazing subject. I hope somebody really tackles that one day.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Absolutely would.
Another doc, as long as we're on docs, I want to make a mention of Rising from Ashes, which is narrated by Forrest Whitaker, is a really, really, really terrific doc. This is from First Run Features. This is a cycling doc. We're big on cycling in my house. My wife tore her ACL many, many years ago playing basketball, and recovered from it with an ACL transplant, and as part of rehabbing, got into cycling. And, we watch the Tour de France every year and all kinds of stuff, and it's a big deal. But cycling is a very, very specific kind of sport for very specific countries. Like if you remember the '80s when Greg LeMond won the Tour de France as the first American to do so, everybody was like kind of shocked, like an American winning the Tour de France. Like it's not anything. That's supposed to only be for French people, Italians, and maybe occasionally somebody who's Dutch. That was it, or Belge. The same people who win all the skiing medals. It's a very specific thing. It's Italy and Spain and France and where the Alps are, and occasionally they'll let a German in the club. And here, Jock Boyer, who is a great American cyclist, he goes to Rwanda to help them put together the first Rwanda national cycling team in order to compete in the Olympic Games. And it's a little bit of a Cool Runnings kind of a thing, where you're going to a country that doesn't have a tradition for this particular sport and saying, why the hell not? Dream big, right? But it is so touching. It is so, so beautiful. And if you don't know Jock Boyer, he was the first American to actually compete in the Tour de France. He never won, but he was the first American to actually be in it. And so he knows what it means to be a guy in a country or from a country that's not supposed to be in this sport. Yeah. So he's taking that experience to Rwanda, and he's inspiring them. And it's just the cyclists themselves are so amazing. They so want to learn. They are so talented. It's just, and considering what Rwanda went through not too long ago with the genocide, it has, that casts a shadow on this as well. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful movie. You got to watch it. It's so inspiring. Rising from Ashes, narrated by Forrest Whitaker and directed by T.C. Johnstone. Really, really a great documentary.
In America, we've always had such a strange relationship with a number of sports that we might think of as European sports. Whether what we call
soccer,
all that kind of stuff, cycling. In the middle 70s, I can remember when both of those sports in the middle 70s were huge in America.
Yeah.
When racing bikes, what was that movie? It was that sort of poignant, sweet movie.
Breaking Away.
Yeah. And that sort of came on the heels of this sort of moment in America when cycling was this thing. Interesting.
One other doc I want to make a quick mention of: Quiet Explosions, Healing the Brain. If you know anybody who suffers from TBI, which is traumatic brain injury, please watch this. It's more than just something to pass the time. I do have a friend who suffers from TBI, and I see it on a regular basis. And if you have anyone in your life who has been impacted by TBI, and there are millions and millions of people that suffer from this every year, it's a lifelong thing, and it can happen if you got mugged. It can happen if you get injured in too many concussions in sports. It happened to Michael Hutchence, and Michael Hutchence committed suicide because he was attacked by a crazed cabbie in Copenhagen one year, and his head hit the pavement, and nobody ever realized that he suffered traumatic brain injury from that altercation, and it wound up taking his life, or causing him to take his own life. So I would really urge people to see this. This has wonderful interviews with physicians in it, and it's just absolutely essentially important. Quiet Explosions, Healing the Brain, from Emmy Award-winning director Jerry Sher. Really, really worth checking out, especially if you have somebody in your life, someone you love who suffers from TBI.
I just, this last one just for me in the docs, that Chuck Berry doc.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, the original king of rock and roll. Chuck Berry, the original king of rock and roll. There are a lot of Chuck Berry docs, Hail, Hail, Rock and Roll, or docs where he appears. And they all speak to him as a sort of foundational figure in the building of what would become rock and roll, even the designation of this thing called rock and roll. I like this one because it's kind of about Chuck Berry as a guy. Chuck Berry is from St. Louis. I'm from St. Louis. And how he was really just a sort of family man guy. And by association, little Richard and so many other figures from that period. How Nat King Cole, Chuck Berry was in the world of all of these people. The guy that directed this, guy named John Brewer, who directed a whole bunch of docs about important people from various different periods in the music business, was specifically selected by the Berry estate to produce and direct this sort of inside look at Chuck Berry. And I think that's what I kind of like about it. This one's sort of a complete look at Chuck Berry and what he meant to the foundation of rock and roll.
As far as I'm concerned, it begins with Chuck Berry.
Yeah.
I think if you don't have Chuck Berry, you don't get Little Richard, and if you don't have Little Richard, you don't get Elvis, and you don't get the Beatles, and you don't get all the rest of it. I mean, you just don't. And Chuck Berry changed how we play electric guitar.
Yeah.
I mean, he quite literally changed it.
Yeah.
It was a very different instrument until he got his hands on it, and he changed performance too.
Absolutely.
Beautiful doc.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get into one other Criterion release this week. 3 films by Luis Buñuel. If you have these on DVD, you can now get rid of them and pick up all 3 in Blu-ray. The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie, The Phantom of Liberty, and That Obscure Object of Desire. Pretty much the 3 great Buñuel films that you absolutely have to have, and you have to see, especially That Obscure Object of Desire from 1977. Buñuel is not everybody's taste. He's certainly a surrealist in every sense of the word, but boy, his movies are just so fascinating, and especially at this stage of his career, which is like late stage Buñuel, long after he made, Un Chien Andalou and some of his earlier work when he was starving. My favorite thing on here are these interviews from 2000 with Jean-Claude Carrière, the great screenwriter who worked with so many famed directors, including Philip Kaufman, co-wrote The Unbearable Lightness of Being, worked on all of these Buñuel films, and he talks about Phantom of Liberty and That Obscure Object of Desire here. It's wonderful, one of the great screenwriters of all time. Archival interviews from all of these with just about everybody who was in them. Tons and tons of stuff here. Feature documentaries, on all over the place. It's really an amazing box set. If you're a Buñuel fan, can't be without it. If you're not, well, get it anyway and watch them until you learn to appreciate Buñuel.
Yes. Slicing eyeballs.
Yeah. Some other, Tim, let's talk for a second about some other stuff here. Got a couple from Mill Creek. One I want to spend a minute on. The first one is Accepted, which is kind of a silly little, semi-raunchy, PG-13 rated college slacker comedy. Really only noteworthy because of the fact that Justin Long and Blake Lively are in it, and Lewis Black shows up before he was kind of a huge comic figure.
Jonah Hill, that was one of those moments that you could follow a lot of, a lot of folks who did some stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of predictable, and Jonah Hill's semi funny in it, but not sensationally amazing. The film I do want to talk about, however, also from Mill Creek, is Your Highness.
Mm-hmm.
So Tim, we saw this at the same press screening together. This was directed by David Gordon Green, who made George Washington, for crying out loud.
I just can't connect that guy in that movie to that same guy in this movie.
I know, that's the problem. So he made this after Pineapple Express, which was another detour. But this is with Danny McBride, James Franco, Natalie Portman shows up in this for some reason. This is truly one of the worst films I've ever seen in my life. I can't process how this is made by the same guy that made George Washington. Like it's like a pot smoking period wizard fantasy comedy with whatever. It's like Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court if it were made by potheads or something. I don't really get it. I don't understand it. Here's my recollection of this press screening, and there was no way in hell I was ever going to watch this Blu-ray a second time. So I remember sitting at the ArcLight, and the lights go down, and I was sitting with you, and I think Mark was there too. And I think about 10 minutes into this movie, I popped the armrests up, and I stretched out across 3 seats in the back row, and I went to sleep. And then I remember I remember hearing you laughing, and you weren't laughing with the movie; you were laughing at the movie, and you woke me up. And I looked up, and Natalie Portman was stabbing somebody or something with an orb and a talisman. I don't remember what was going on. Do you remember this?
I remember it absolutely. Yes, I haven't seen it since either, but yes, I was laughing. Yeah, not with. It was and Mark and I had been sitting here talking about this is the guy that directed George Washington, which is this extremely meditative, beautiful film set in this I don't know, whatever, where are they from? North Carolina, South Carolina, all these guys.
Yeah,
community and a bunch of dude. Zoe, this movie, you got Toby Jones, you got Zoe Deschanel, you got the great Charles Dance in this movie. Damian Lewis is in this movie. I mean, these are all people who are in like these have gone on Game of Thrones, in really important television, all this, but they're all in this perfectly ludicrous movie. And I just can't get I could 2006. I couldn't get my mind around it then. I can't get my mind around it now.
Well, there it is, Your Highness. A few other things, real quickly. Let me pull them out here. We've got two different series that are all kind of old VHS tribute series. I'm going to go through these real quickly just so you know that they're out there. One of them is the MVD Rewind collection, and then the other one is the Mill Creek kind of equivalent to it. They're all done a little bit with the old, they put the fake stickers on that VHS tapes used to have. So
I give that another 5 years of people having any idea what the reference,
what that means. Yeah. So from the Mill Creek version of that, we have The Freshman with Marlon Brando and Matthew Broderick. Actually, a surprisingly great film from Andrew Bergman, which is really very underrated. So I'm sorry that's kind of getting the VHS retro treatment here, because it's really, really a good movie. Like Father, Like Son with Dudley Moore and Kirk Cameron, one of the original body switching movies. Not a good movie, but Kirk Cameron's getting a little bit
post Freaky Friday.
Yeah,
about 1990 or so, I think that.
Kind of a bad movie, but whatever. There was the other one with Judge Reinhold that came out the same summer. Yeah. Ralph Macchio, who again is a bit of a thing in Cobra Kai, did Crossroads for director Walter Hill back in the day, and this is a really sweet film. It's kind of been forgotten a little bit, but it's also got Joe Seneca in it and Jamie Gertz, kind of coming off of what was it, Square Pegs on Television.
Square Pegs, yeah, Less Than Zero, all that, yeah.
But really, it's a beautiful tribute to the blues, is what it is. It's a beautiful tribute to the blues, and Joe Seneca just plays such a beautiful harmonica, and Ralph Macchio's playing blues on guitar, and it's a sweet little movie. Then there's Rutger Hauer, again, the late Rutger Hauer in Blind Fury, which is sort of a blind swordsmen are a bit of a thing in both Chinese and Japanese movies. They have a history there.
Yeah.
And they decided, hey, let's make one of those for Americans with Rutger Hauer. Didn't go over quite so well. Philip Noyce directed it. I'm sure he'd like to forget that he did. Anyway, Randall Tex Cobb's in here too. It's okay. It's got some fun moments. But it's not much to scream about. And then the MVD Rewind collection includes Bloodfight and Ironheart, both of them with Bolo Yeung. Bolo Yeung, of course, being one of the all-time great heavies in martial arts films. He's the guy that Bruce Lee has to beat the crap out of at the beginning of Enter the Dragon. So neither of these are particularly good, but if you love Bolo Yeung, you're going to want to watch Ironheart and Bloodfight. We have Rutger Hauer again in Split Second. He's like the king of VHS this week. Split Second is kind of a cheesy, like if his Blade Runner character didn't die. And this takes place in 2008 as a futuristic environment. It was made in 1992. It didn't really predict 2008 very well. It's a little bit post-apocalyptic. But it's okay. It's Rutger. Kim
Cattrall's in that movie.
Kim Cattrall. It's got like an alien thing going on. It's silly. Max Reload and the Nether Blasters is one of those one of those just absolutely ridiculous movies. It's not part of the MVD Rewind series because it's a new movie, but it belongs there, and that's why I'm including it. This has our friend Greg Grunberg in it. Next time I see him, I haven't seen him for years, but next time I see him, I'm gonna totally rib him for doing this. Like he just made he was in Star Wars. Why are you doing this, Greg? I don't understand. Anyway, it's sort of a retro thing. It's a little bit of a retro thing, it's got like this guy who's a video game clerk finds the only known copy of this game series which does this like Jumanji thing and unleashes the dark forces of the netherworld, and it's whatever. Kevin Smith is in it. That tells everything you need to know.
Anything that has a netherworld in it is probably going to be
that's silly. Nether blasters.
Nether blast.
And then we have Gun Crazy with Drew Barrymore and James LeGros, which is not bad, right? That was a pretty good little movie.
Yeah.
And then lastly is Mikey with Josie Bennett, Lyman Ward, Mimi Craven, and Brian Bonzal. Those were once names to a certain group of people. They are not anymore. But this is kind of one of those evil child things, those bad seed movies. It doesn't age particularly well, but again, it's if you like bad child, bad seed, murderous kid movies, which sort of peaked with The Omen, I think. Mikey is an interesting post-Omen entry in the genre. Anyway, that's a good little collection of VHS-y rewind throwback things. We only have a few minutes left. You want to cover the Arrow stuff? We also had some TV. Is there anything in here that you particularly think we should talk about?
You go ahead and grab it. If anything pops up, I'll chime in.
Let me plow through some of the Arrow stuff here.
Always happy to talk about Tremors, of course.
Oh, let's do that. Let's start it with Tremors.
The special edition, and I have to imagine there have been 10,000 special editions of Tremors. This is the original Tremors, of course.
This is the original Tremors on 4K, and it's great. It comes with a booklet, and then Universal licensed it to Arrow and just said 4K, go for it. We're not going to do it. So that's why we have Arrow and Criterion, because they will reach out and they will do what the license holders will not. Yeah. This is a brand new 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray set, loads of extras. I can't even get into it. It's like new interviews and old interviews and featurettes, and it's like everything there is to know about Tremors is here, including the archival 1995 Laurent Bouzereau documentary. It's all here. It's a great film, and I should point out, you wrote a script that's a little Tremor-ish, and so you can tell that Tim's got a thing for Tremors. So I'll let you weigh in on it.
Well, I love this movie. For Ron Underwood directing this film, Kevin Bacon, Fred Ward, Finn Carter, who the young lady in the movie, I always felt should have had a slightly bigger career. But of course, you have the wonderful Reba McEntire,
she's so good,
who playing her husband out there in that thing, Michael Gross.
Yes.
And those characters, or at least his character out of those characters, have gone on to continue to make these movies. This is 1990, man. And if I'm not mistaken, they're still making Tremors, movie, TV type things. And Michael Gross shows up in just about every one of them. So, he made a career out.
I'm going to tell you something too. Michael Gross starred in a movie called Alan and Naomi, which, as it happens, was directed by a guy that was, one of my wife's teachers in film school. So we have a bit of a connection. But I interviewed him for Entertainment Today when we were writing for Entertainment Today. Yeah. I interviewed Michael Gross for that, and really, it was a phone interview, not one of the in-person deals. It was a phoner, but one of the nicest, most genuine people I think I've ever talked to. Really, really a great guy. So I can't say enough about Michael Gross. He was really a class act and still is. Also from Arrow, Versus, a Ryuhei Kitamura samurai film. This is not, this is more pulp samurai stuff. You have your artsy samurai, which is usually the Kurosawa stuff and the Mizoguchi stuff. This is just really, really intense, kind of pulpy samurai stuff. But it's not straight samurai. It's like genre samurai. It includes, like Yakuza and zombies, and it's, it's sort of all over the map. And Kitamura is one of those kinds of guys who just loves to fuse all of these genres together. So you're watching it, mainly for the sword play, but it's got a lot more going on. It kind of all over the map, and it's really, really crazy. It was very successful in Japan. Tons of extras. Really, really fun to check out. It sort of launched Kitamura's career. Really made him a big deal. So it's a cool film. The last two here, Cinema Paradiso, which has been out before a lot. This is a 4K of Cinema Paradiso, and it is to die for. Arrow has really, really done a number here. They this
God,
is the
1988.
I know.
Oh my
I know.
God, jeez. Yeah,
I know.
that literally
It
hurts.
has both cuts on it, the 124-minute American cut and the nearly 3-hour original director's cut. They did 4K restoration on everything from the original camera negative. Giuseppe Tornatore oversaw all of this stuff. It is really, really great. Now, it's worth saying that the restoration of the director's cut was done. This is all in 4K for television, but the restoration of the director's cut was done in 2K, and the restoration of the theatrical version, the American theatrical version, which was cut basically by Harvey Weinstein, was done in 4K. But you still watch this in 4K here. So let me try to clarify. You're still watching. So this is 4K of the American release and 2K Blu-ray of the full theatrical cut, all on one disc. So they did restorations of both. Am I making sense, or am I confusing everybody more? So I just want people to understand that when they see the 4K, it's the version you love, the Harvey Weinstein cut version from the original, the release here in the U.S. And the director's cut on here was restored again, was done given a proper dress up, but that's only in 2K and on a Blu-ray, both on the same disc. Hopefully, I haven't confused anybody, but but they're both restored. I better stop talking. I'm making a fool of myself. It's. Anyway,
I'm still depressed that it was 1988. For Christ's sake, I was thinking, oh, I remember this movie in the middle. No, 1988. Oh my.
Well, it's and audio commentary on here with Tornatore is absolutely wonderful. There's also a little 27-minute documentary that I'd never seen before, A Bear and a Mouse in Paradise, which is all about the making of the film. And that's just beautiful too. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's really, really wonderful here. And then the last one from Arrow, and I think a couple of TV things I want to mention before we leave. 3 films by Shohei Imamura: The Ballad of Narayama, Zegan, and Black Rain. Narayama was the first film that won him a Palme d'Or. The Eel, which is not in this box set, was the second film he won a Palme d'Or for. That was in '97, and I was there. And we didn't see that one coming. But Imamura, one of the very few double winners of the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival. These are they call these survivor ballads, the 3 films: Ballad of Narayama, Zegan, and Black Rain. Beautiful films, all very slow films. Imamura is not everybody's taste. He makes very, very Ozu pacing films, but they are they are not Ozu looks at Japanese society. They look at sort of the seamier side of the society, the people who are the marginalized prostitutes, and again kind of getting to what we talked about a little bit earlier with Algren. He kind of takes a poetic look at the peasantry and the people who are really on the margins. So anyway, Ballad of Narayama is worth getting this all by itself. It's a tremendous film adapted from an old Japanese folk tale, and it's all about this this family of farmers barely eking out a subsistence life in the north of Japan. Really a wonderful story that takes a very dark turn, and it kind of jars your soul. So all this stuff is great. And then of course Black Rain is famous because it was very much one of the films that confronted the idea of nuclear fear, especially in Japan, head on. So 3 films by Shohei Imamura, survivor ballads. Tim, let's talk for a second about season 2 of Jordan Peele's Twilight Zone. That's out. That is out on DVD from Paramount. I have very mixed feelings about Jordan Peele's Twilight Zone.
Well, what are yours? Season 2, because those feelings that you're talking about rose in me during season 1. So I didn't make it to season 2. So sort of interesting. I'll be interested to hear what you have to say about season 2. In season 1, much of the problem that I had with what I was watching, with his sort of interpretation of what the dynamic of Twilight Zone was in the first place, is, look, I suppose that what I was anticipating was a perspective that was somewhat aligned in alignment with Rod Serling's.
There we go.
He had this very specific thing that Rod Serling was doing. And if you're going to do Twilight Zone, it seems to me that you have to be, no matter what stories you tell, by the way, it doesn't make any difference what the story is, but the thing that you're doing, it ought to be the thing that Rod Serling was doing. Now, this is the first time that an adaptation of the Twilight Zone series made that mistake. The one in the 80s did the same thing. They decided to make these sort of science fiction based shows in the 80s, quasi science fiction, quasi hard. But none of them were doing what Rod Serling was doing. Rod Serling understood irony.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that Jordan is getting that either, even though I know he's a very, very big fan of it all. So what do you come away?
When Steven Spielberg wanted to do an anthology series, he didn't do Twilight Zone. He did Amazing Stories because that let him put his imprimatur on it.
Mm-hmm.
Twilight Zone has now been rebooted. They've been trying to milk that brand for the last 50 years. Mm-hmm. They've rebooted it at least 4 times, this being the 4th. And I think what all of them miss is Twilight Zone is, remember what I was saying earlier about casting? You want somebody that brings their soul to something. Twilight Zone came right out of the soul of Rod Serling.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you can do Twilight Zone without Rod Serling. I don't want to see Jordan Peele's take on Twilight Zone.
No.
I want to see Jordan Peele's original anthology series.
Yeah.
Rod Serling's Twilight Zone and Jordan Peele's fill in the blank. I want Jordan Peele to do his thing, not to try to ram himself into Rod Serling's legacy. Rod Serling was first and foremost a writer, and a very particular kind of writer. Jordan Peele is a hyphenate. He is a performer. He is a comedian. He is a writer. He is a director. And, that's a very different way of approaching things. I think Jordan Peele is first and foremost a director, to be honest. And I don't, he's not as prolific as Rod Serling, because Rod Serling never directed his own stuff. Rod Serling would sit there and he'd just knock out script after script after script after script. Jordan Peele's a guy who knows he's going to direct his own stuff. You and I both know when you direct your own stuff, you don't sit there and just start knocking out scripts.
No.
You're writing to what you want to direct. And so I think Jordan Peele has a very, very, very different take on genre, a very different take on the world. And I think we've moved past the Twilight Zone world. It's not that kind of moment in the 1950s and 60s when the shadow of nuclear war hung over everything. And 2/3 of the Twilight Zones basically are kind of riffing off of, Cold War paranoia in some respect. We got different things. And I really think that it's unfair to Jordan Peele and to Rod Serling to kind of try to force them together in this. I think Jordan Peele should get a shot at doing he's certainly enough of a name that he can brand something on his own.
Oh, absolutely. And look, I'll tell you who else knew that was a mistake. Rod Serling. Rod Serling didn't even repeat Rod Serling. When he did his second series, it was Night Gallery, and it is a completely different genre because that was complete. So there you go. Yeah. So didn't make it to the second season. Anyway, anything decent in there? Did anything stand out? Did they at least put something interesting on there?
I mean, some of the episodes are fine, but I can't get over the fact that they're all in color.
Yeah,
and I don't. Yeah, I mean, it's nice to see some of these actors show up, like Christopher Maloney. I haven't seen him forever, so it's nice to kind of see him again. Billy Porter doesn't really belong here. I mean, Billy Porter's a tough person. You know what I'm saying? Billy Porter is hard to fit in a lot of things. You got to write to Billy Porter. You don't go, oh, Billy Porter would be good in this part. That just doesn't happen. You're like, let's write something for Billy Porter. So that's a little weird.
Is the part for a flamboyant gay man? Because if it's not, it's going to be wrong for Billy Porter.
It's very alien. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
Topher Grace, nice to see him kind of show up. Gretchen Mol, So I mean, there are people here, but it's not the same as the old ones. It's
You
not
know
the
what?
same
I'll
as it
even
used
say
to be.
this about that middle '80s, early '80s Twilight Zone. If you watch that middle '80s, early '80s Twilight Zone today, you will find that you see all kinds of just noted actors, right? They're all
Yep.
young and younger, but they are noted. But you know what they weren't then? Noted. They were just actors in this episode of The Twilight Zone, and I didn't know him from a hole in the wall. David Strathairn,
That's true.
whoever.
Yeah.
Here, Jordan, and it's not him. It's the way of production today. Everybody is in the episode is either a movie star or a former movie star or a TV star, as opposed to when I was watching just some episode of Twilight Zone, at any given moment, I didn't know I was watching William Shatner. He hadn't played Captain Kirk yet. He was just a guy in an episode of a Twilight Zone, making me believe that there was a dude on the wing of the plane.
Last thing I want to mention, The Expanse, season 4. I have been slaving my way through The Expanse. Finally got through season 4. You and I have talked about this. I really wrestle with this show. It's not realistic enough for me. It just, Earth and Mars at war in the near future, and all this soap opera drama going on with the mining around the asteroid belt, and it's basically like an interstellar soap opera, but localized in as if expansion in the future in the Earth's solar system creates all of these interplanetary rivalries now, and the Earth has a president. It's all one nation on the Earth, and it feels very cartoony and like they really missed an opportunity. I know Steve Bezos loves this show. That's why it was resurrected on Amazon and given a much higher budget, originally a Canadian production, but I love Shohreh Aghdashloo. I've been on a film festival jury with Shohreh Aghdashloo. She's a wonderful lady. She's great in this, but damn it all, I can't feel like they keep missing an opportunity on this show.
Yeah, there's some interesting ideas, about where the technology will be at whatever point they are out in the future.
And you talk about David Strathairn too, who is terrific. I will say that he's great on this. But
you're doing that sort of Cajun sort of thing, and these sort of and a lot of interesting ideas there. At the end of the day, though, the sort of politics, the sort of soap opera politics of it all get away. I'd rather just see that technology
it feels to me like a cop out to get rid of all of the political divisions on Earth and mash it all together just so that you can now have a political war between Earth and Mars with the asteroid belt caught in the middle.
Yeah.
It feels like, well, I'd rather you keep all of the divisions on Earth and extend that out, and so that we have a much more a richer tapestry. It's like you sort of tap the one out so that you can migrate it into a science fiction environment, and it oversimplifies it in a way that I felt was a bit of a cheat. But whatever, there it is.
Yeah, there it is.
There it is. All right, Tim. Be well. Yeah. Hopefully we can do this again in person within not too many weeks. But let's hope that it all kind of starts to wrap out soon.
Look, this whole damn thing, all kinds of things can go wacky one way or the other. But with all things being equal, I figure this is going to end up having cost us all about a year and a half of ordinary existence. From last whatever it was, March, January, whenever you want to start. So that would take us up into July-ish, August-ish, about a year and a half. And right now, thus, I think would be a good moment to start thinking about what will I have gained from this year and a half. And if you haven't gained anything yet, start figuring out something to gain. Not weight. Don't gain any weight. But other than that, if you've had to tap the brakes for a year and a half or 6 months or whatever, you got to get something out of it, more than just depression. So that's what I'm doing. I'm working on getting something out of it, and everybody take a beat and figure out a way to do that.
Super wise words. All right, everybody. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.